Now, we all know America has, let's call them quirks. And look, every country has its things, right? But sometimes you can't help but wonder, what if some of these states decided they'd rather be sipping maple syrup and saying A instead of, well, whatever it is they do down there? What if they wanted healthcare that doesn't bankrupt them, and a government that doesn't feel like a reality show gone horribly wrong? That's what we're diving into today, folks. We're talking about 10 states that might just be a moose antler away from joining the Great White North. We'll unpack the surprising reasons why, from political leanings to geographical quirks to maybe, just maybe, a deep-seated longing for a decent plate of poutine. Buckle up, because things are about to get politely rebellious up in here. What if some US states decided to break away and join Canada? In this video, we'll cover 10 states and the reasons why they might make the switch. Let's kick things off with Maine, shall we? It's practically cuddling Canada already, sharing a border with both New Brunswick and Quebec. And it's not just geography, folks. Maine and its northern neighbors share a cultural kinship, a love for the great outdoors. And let's be honest, probably a healthy distrust of anyone who doesn't own a good pair of snow boots. Economically, Maine and Canada are already deeply intertwined. They trade more with each other than almost any other state-province pairing. Lumber, seafood, you name it, they're practically joined at the hip. Or should we say the beaver tail? And let's not forget, Maine already has a bit of a rebellious streak. Remember that whole taxation without representation thing? Yeah, they take their independence seriously up there. So, is it that much of a stretch to imagine them trading in the stars and stripes for a maple leaf or two? Next up, we have Vermont. Now, Vermont is known for its progressive politics, its stunning fall foliage, and its uncanny ability to produce more maple syrup than any sane person could ever need. But here's the thing, Vermont's progressive values align far more closely with Canada's than, say, some of the, shall we say, more passionate political landscapes south of its border. We're talking universal health care, a focus on social welfare, and a general aversion to, electing leaders who tweet more than they govern. Plus, let's not forget that Vermont shares a border with Quebec, a province known for its European charm, its love of good cheese, and its surprisingly tolerant stance on Celine Dion. Coincidence? We think not. New Hampshire, the Granite State, home to stunning mountains, charming small towns, and a slogan that just screams, "We do things our own way." And you know what? Maybe their way involves joining a country that actually values things like affordable education and a functioning healthcare system. Think about it. New Hampshire is right up there in the northernmost reaches of the US, practically within spitting distance of the Canadian border. They've got more in common with their moose-loving neighbors to the north than they do with, say, the folks down in Florida who wrestle alligators for fun. Plus, New Hampshire has a long and storied history of being fiercely independent. They were one of the original 13 colonies, for crying out loud. They practically invented the concept of sticking it to the man. So really, joining Canada wouldn't be that much of a stretch. It would just be them doing their own thing, as they always have. Minnesota, the land of 10,000 lakes. Also known as, honestly, the state that makes you question why anyone would willingly choose to live somewhere that cold. But hey, maybe that's exactly why they'd fit right in with Canada. I mean, they're practically built for long winters, with a hardy population that doesn't even flinch at the sight of snow in October. Culturally, Minnesota and Canada are, well, practically two sides of the same coin. They're both known for their friendly locals, their love of hockey. Seriously, have you seen a Minnesota hockey game? It's practically a religious experience, and their uncanny ability to consume, ungodly amounts of cheese curds. And let's not forget the economic ties. Minnesota and Canada are major trading partners, with everything from agricultural products to manufactured goods flowing across the border. They need each other, folks. It's a match made in, well, if not heaven, then at least a very well-organized and polite customs office. All right, let's talk about Michigan, the Mitten State, home to the Motor City, stunning Great Lakes shorelines, and honestly, a whole lot of people who really, really love their cars. But what if, just hear me out, what if those car-loving Michiganders decided they'd rather be cruising down the Trans-Canada Highway in a sensible, fuel-efficient, well, okay, they'd probably still drive a truck. But the point is, Michigan joining Canada isn't as far-fetched as you might think. For starters, they share a massive border with Ontario. We're talking about the Great Lakes here, people. That's a whole lot of shared water, shared resources, and probably a few shared fishing stories that may or may not involve a giant muskie and a six-pack of Molson. Plus, Michigan and Canada have a long history of economic cooperation, particularly in the automotive industry. So really, it would just be a matter of formalizing the relationship. Think of it as a shotgun wedding, but instead of a shotgun, it's a hockey stick. And instead of a wedding cake, it's a giant beaver tail pastry. Now, Alaska is a bit of a wild card, literally. It's geographically isolated from the rest of the US, just hanging out up there by itself, closer to Russia than it is to Washington, D.C. And honestly, who can blame them for feeling a little bit distant? They're practically in their own time zone. But here's the thing, Alaska shares a massive border with Canada. A really, really big border, like we could be sharing a cup of sugar over the fence kind of border. They're practically neighbors, except their backyard happens to be full of glaciers and grizzlies. And let's not forget, Alaska has a history of doing things its own way. They've got a strong independent streak, a love of the great outdoors, and a healthy appreciation for a good pair of long johns. Sounds pretty Canadian to me. Montana, land of big skies, big mountains, and a whole lot of wide open spaces. It's the kind of place where you can go for days without seeing another soul, unless you count the occasional moose or grizzly bear. And you know what else Montana has a lot of? Border with Canada. Seriously, their northern border is basically one long handshake with Alberta and Saskatchewan. They share stunning mountain ranges, vast prairies, and a deep-seated appreciation for a good pair of cowboy boots. Culturally, Montana and Canada are more alike than you might think. They're both known for their rugged individualism, their love of the great outdoors, and their uncanny ability to survive on a diet of beef jerky and strong coffee. North Dakota might not be the first state that comes to mind when you think of Canada, but hear me out. They share a border with Manitoba and Saskatchewan, and let's be honest, they have more in common with their northern neighbors than they do with, say, the folks down in Florida who are currently trying to teach alligators to play poker. Economically, North Dakota and Canada are already deeply intertwined. They're both major producers of energy, agriculture, and surprisingly good music. Seriously, look up the Guess Who. You're welcome. Culturally, North Dakota and Canada are practically cut from the same cloth. They're both known for their friendly locals, their love of hockey. Seriously, is there a pattern here? And their ability to withstand winters that would make a polar bear shiver. Washington State home to grunge music, tech giants, and more coffee shops than you can shake a maple stick at. But what if, and just stay with me here, what if Washington decided to trade in its Starbucks for Tim Hortons? What if they decided that life would be just a little bit better with universal healthcare and a slightly less chaotic political landscape? Well, folks, it might not be as crazy as it sounds. Washington shares a border with British Columbia, a province known for its stunning natural beauty, its laid-back vibe, and its surprisingly good taste in sweaters. Seriously, have you seen a Canadian in a cable knit sweater? They look like they just stepped out of a holiday catalog. Culturally, Washington and British Columbia are already practically two sides of the same coin. They're both known for their love of the great outdoors, their progressive values, and their uncanny ability to make even the most die-hard coffee snob happy. New York City, the Big Apple, the city that never sleeps, could probably use a nap though. And maybe, just maybe, they'd find that nap a little bit more restful under the watchful eye of the Canadian government. Now I know what you're thinking. New York City, joining Canada, never gonna happen. But hear me out. New York shares a border with Ontario, specifically around Niagara Falls. And let's be honest, who wouldn't want to be just a hop, skip, and a jump away from one of the most stunning natural wonders in the world? Plus, New York has a lot more in common with Canada than you might think. They're both diverse, multicultural melting pots with a love of good food, good music, and good, well, you get the idea. And let's not forget, New York is no stranger to doing things its own way. They're trendsetters, innovators, and let's be honest, they're not afraid to tell you what they think. So, there you have it, 10 US states that might just be a little bit closer to joining Canada than you might think. From their geographical proximity to their cultural similarities to their, maybe, just maybe, slight envy of Canada's healthcare system, these states have got a lot of reasons to consider making the move. Of course, this is all purely hypothetical. Or is it? We'll let you be the judge of that. Which state do you think would fit best with Canada? Let us know in the comments.